Welcome to Stay at Home Wellness, where we talk about why wellness is so different for stay at home moms and what to do about it. I'm Hannah Stewart from wellnesswithhannah.com, and today we're talking about 3 reasons you are struggling with eating too much sugar. And this is something that comes up a lot for moms, especially because we are home all the time. We don't necessarily have structured meals and snacks, although if you do, that's awesome. But for a lot of moms, they find themselves just grazing throughout the day. And then if there's any sugar in the house, they just naturally gravitate towards that. So a lot of moms can find themselves really struggling with this, getting into bad habits, and trying to figure out what is going on, why is this such a struggle, and how to get out of it. So today I'm talking about 3 reasons why you might be struggling with sugar. The first is that you're not eating enough throughout the day. And I see this actually all the time with different people. They are trying, it could be actually for a variety of reasons. So it could just be you're a busy mom, you're super focused on the kids all day, then you get to 5, 6 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever time it is for you, and you're ravenous. And what happens is your body feels like it's starving in a sense because you've been hungry all day long. And as the day goes on, your body wants something that will satisfy that need fast. And so it's not content with something like an almond or something like that. It wants something that will give quick energy because your blood sugar is so low because you've waited so long to eat. So this can be a huge reason that moms struggle with eating sugar, especially if it's in the late afternoon or evening. And it's not necessarily because you have so little self-discipline. It actually may be because you're not eating food throughout the day. Another reason moms do this a lot is because they are trying to lose the baby weight, right? And in effort to do this, they try to cut out all these different foods throughout the day. They try to be super diligent. They try to eat really low carb, which actually eating low carb often causes those cravings, right? Because your body relies on carbohydrate quite heavily and it's its preferred source of energy. So if you're just cutting out carbs left and right, you're going to find yourself craving them even more. So this is another reason that moms can really struggle with eating lots of sugar later in the day is because they haven't been eating enough for whatever reason. So this is a huge reason that you as a mom might be struggling. I would really encourage you to evaluate it's really easy as moms to evaluate from external standards if you're eating enough, because if you look on like a MyFitnessPal app and they tell you how much your body needs, oftentimes those apps are not factoring in things like the fact that you're breastfeeding, the fact that you're being really active throughout the day. At least for me, I'm on my feet pretty much constantly walking. I talked to one mom and she just has a 2-level home, but she said she walks, I think it was like 8,000 steps just from doing around the house work. So then if you add in a workout and a nursing baby, a lot of times their energy needs are quite a bit higher. So a much more reliable way than a calculator is to rely on hunger and fullness cues. And I'd love to do a whole nother episode on this, but your body is actually the best determination of how much food you need. And your body knows better than that app that you have or that watch that you have or whatever it is that you're using to track things. So I would really encourage you, if you aren't already, to try to cue in more to hunger and fullness cues and to make sure you're eating sufficiently throughout the day. Because if you aren't, you will absolutely pay for it in the evening when you come home or your husband gets home and everyone's starving, you're starving, or when your kids are napping and you realize this is your first meal of the day, you're absolutely going to want to go for sugar first for that quick energy. So that is the first reason you might be struggling with sugar. The second reason may be that you're viewing sugar as bad. And this one sounds kind of crazy because our entire culture views sugar as the devil. They use all kinds of terms like they talk about like guilty. It's like a guilty pleasure, right? Or a sinful pleasure. And you hear about things that are sugar-free as like guiltless. So we've almost associated sugar with like sin in a religious sense, even though it is something that God created. And while if you eat it in excess, just like if you eat anything else in excess, it can cause problems. Sugar in and of itself is not wrong to enjoy. And so I would encourage you, if you're struggling with that mindset, to try to find a time in the day where you incorporate a small treat into the day. Maybe it's like you eat some chocolate with your husband after the kids go to bed, or a little bowl of ice cream. Something like that. And the rest of the day, you don't eat as much sugar, right? You eat foods that are going to fill you up and give you energy to be the mom that you want to be. But a big part of eating is actually satisfaction. So eating is not just physiological, right? It's also a social behavior. And it's one that we derive pleasure from. And so many people try to cut out all of the pleasure from food and view it only as fuel. And that's just not how God created it, right? If he wanted it to be that way, he could have made everything taste like cardboard and be exactly the same color and texture, but he didn't. So it's to be enjoyed with gratitude. So one of the best ways to do that is to try different kinds of the foods that he's created and to do so with gratitude. So if it's something you're struggling with, I would encourage you to incorporate a treat throughout the day with a friend, someone where, oftentimes, at least for me, if my husband's there, I'm not going to eat a whole pint of ice cream or something, right? I'm going to have a serving with him and then be done. And so it provides that natural accountability if you're struggling with that, but it also provides a time when you can enjoy it. And for so many people, the reason sugar is so exciting is because it's an off-limits food and they rarely allow themselves to eat it. Then when they finally do, they overeat to excess because they're not used to having it at all. So often the people that struggle the most with binging are the ones that have either dieted before in some way, have viewed it as bad in some way, or have had a previous eating disorder. And the ones that don't tend to struggle with these foods, oftentimes they're the ones that have been slim their entire life, and they probably have This episode is sponsored by the Baby Trend jogging stroller, and this is one of my absolute favorite jogging strollers. The thing I love about it is that it is a double jogging stroller. It goes well on so many different terrains, and it's super easy to push. So my husband actually used this jogging stroller when he was training for a 10-mile mountain race. So he would use it to push both of my children up and down hills in it on long runs, and it worked great for us. So I would highly recommend it because if you're trying to be more active, one of the biggest hindrances can actually be your children, even though they're so lovely and wonderful and you would not wish them away for the world. So often it's having little kids around that keeps you from going out of doors, going on family hikes, things like that, because you know your 1-year-old isn't going to make it on a 2-mile hike or 6-mile hike or whatever hike you like to go on. So what I would recommend is really investing in something like this stroller, and it will allow you to do so much more actively as a family. So if you do decide to go ahead and buy it, it would mean a lot if you use the link below because it does benefit me and my family, which is really helpful during inflation. So thank you guys so much, and let's keep listening to the episode. The healthiest relationship with food because they trust their body, they trust their hunger and fullness signals. They eat sweets on occasion, but they aren't controlled by them, and that's because they rarely have this restrictive mindset. So my husband's actually a great example of this. He could do with or without sweets most of the time. And I think part of that is because he was never pressured to lose weight. He was never told, oh, you shouldn't be eating that. In fact, he was kind of pressured the opposite direction. Oh, you should eat this, to the point where he's like, I really don't want any more food. Like, I'm full. And so he's much more aware of his hunger and fullness signals, whereas many of us had those stripped away from us at an earlier age because of the culture that we live in, the pressure that there is to be thin. So I would really encourage you, if this sounds like you at all, to try to incorporate sweets in a way that feels like you have some accountability, but also you can have that to look forward to. And when you're eating ice cream or chocolate or whatever it is for you, eat to the glory of God. Thank Him for it, enjoy it, and then when it's done, you can move on with your day. The third reason you might be struggling with sugar in general is that you're not eating enough protein and fat throughout the day. So again, a lot of moms actually really are trying to restrict in a variety of ways, and this can really work against moms and create this binge cycle for moms where they're restricting, and then later on they're really hungry and they overeat later on to the point of even like beyond fullness or sickness, right? So we really want to try to minimize this as much as possible. One of the ways you can do this is by eating protein and fat with your snacks and meals. One of the reasons for this is if you only are eating like a simple carbohydrate, something like white rice, pasta, white flour and like a waffle or something like that, that's going to spike your blood sugar really quick, and then you're going to have another dip really fast. But if you pair even that same food, like even though I try to make at least half my grains whole, like the recommendation is, even if you paired like white rice with something like chicken or avocado or something like that, right? It would actually, especially if there's fat in it, it would actually slow digestion. So then that same amount of glucose is being released slower into your bloodstream. So if you aren't doing that throughout the day, if you're trying to, a lot of times this is like the real dieters, right? They're trying to eat a really little granola bar. They're trying to eat a little bowl of oatmeal or something throughout the day. And it's mostly carbohydrates and it's very small. And what happens is you have these huge spikes and dips in your blood sugar. And then by the end of the day, you just are craving something with glucose in it. So I would really encourage you, if this sounds like you, go ahead and try to pair, if you have a little bowl of cereal in the morning, if you have whatever, a banana in the morning, try to pair that with something else. So try to add almond butter or peanut butter, try to add an egg, Try to add even just like a glass of milk. I love protein powder actually, but this could be a really big reason that moms struggle. Another factor to consider is that if you are nursing, if you are really active, your protein needs may be very different again than that MyFitnessPal. I really wish people would get a customized nutrition plan more often, because I went to school for this, right? And I was nursing my kid, and I realized at one point, I was like, I had never even like done the calculation on how much protein I should be eating. I just kind of had a general vague number from like the past in my head, and it was way off. Like I think I was eating like 60 grams of protein a day, because that's what I had been eating at one point in my life. And the range when I was like nursing and the amount of activity I had with weightlifting, it was like 80 to 120 grams that I should be eating. I had no idea, but that when I started adding that, I felt so much better. I wasn't craving sugar all of the time. And I think a big reason is because my body had what it needed. It wasn't relying on so many simple carbohydrates. I was actually eating enough, right? And when you eat enough, your body calms down quite a bit. Those cravings calm down quite a bit, and you are able to enjoy sugar without it feeling like it's controlling you. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me today. If this video was helpful for you at all, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it with a friend or left a review. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode of Stay at Home Wellness.